Hi, my name is Amy Jo, and I'm doing a series on the Book of John. You may have seen the series that my husband Thomas and I did on the Book of Revelation earlier this summer. Revelations is one of the hardest books in the Bible to understand, and it's often avoided. John, on the other hand, is much easier to read and much easier to understand, and many Christians would even say that John is their favorite book of the Bible. Also, if you've never read the Bible before, many pastors would recommend that you begin in the book of John. So this series will be very different from the book of Revelation. If you would like, you can help out. One of these, I'm doing these videos live because Facebook prioritizes live videos, so people are more likely to see this video since it is live. One way that you can help is by hitting like or leaving a comment or sharing the video. That will also cause Facebook to prioritize this video so it's seen up higher on people's news feeds. So that would be an encouragement to me, since Facebook doesn't really provide me with good statistics on how many people are watching the videos, and then it would also make it more likely for others to see the video. A little bit of background info on the book of John. It was written by John, who was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. It may have been the same John that wrote the book of Revelation, but we're not as certain who wrote the book of Revelation, which John it was. John is one of 4 Gospels in the Bible. There is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mark was probably written first, and So Gospel means good news. And these 4 authors were writing the story of the life of Jesus and sharing the good news that we can be saved now that Jesus has come and lived and died and rose from the dead. So each of these 4 authors had a slightly different purpose or audience in mind. The book of Mark was probably written first. It's very fast-paced, and Jesus' identity is kept secret in the book of Mark, which is kind of unique. There are a few times that someone realizes who Jesus is or calls him the Messiah, and he tells them to keep it a secret till the end of the book. Matthew is another one of the Gospels, and this book includes more of Jesus' sermons, and it's also written with a Jewish audience in mind. There are more stories about the Jewish leaders, but not in a good way. They are the ones that should have known who Jesus was. They're the ones that should have known the prophecies and seen that Jesus was fulfilling these prophecies, but they didn't get it. So Matthew includes stories about them, and he also includes stories of people who shouldn't have known who Jesus was, but they did know. For example, Matthew includes the story of the 3 wise men. Now, these wise men were foreigners. They didn't know Israel's God. They didn't know Israel's scriptures. They were studying the stars and saw a new star and followed it to meet, and then they met the king. The Gospel of Luke was written by a doctor, and he says at the very beginning, setting out to write an orderly account of the life of Jesus. He also includes more stories about people who are on the margins of society, the poor and the unimportant. For example, Luke is the only gospel that includes the story of the shepherds coming to see Jesus. And the shepherds were not very important in their society, but they're the ones that the angels came to, and they're the ones that came to visit the baby Jesus. And he also includes several stories of widows in particular who show understanding that others didn't. So widows understood more about the ways of God and about Jesus than others did in the book of Luke. Now, these first 3, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are called the Synoptic Gospels. So think synonym or synonymous. And they're called that because they're very similar. They share many of the same stories, and they all arrange their gospel chronologically. The Gospel of John is very different. John has rearranged the parts. He's mixed up the timeline. He leaves out parts that the other 3 include, and he includes parts that none of the others wrote about. several things that none of the others wrote about. Now, he's not trying to be deceptive or inaccurate. Some would say that since John was probably written after the other three were written, he felt that it was okay to mix up the timeline to emphasize different. Did a link to a couple videos, and those give a good outline of the book of John. You can watch those if you would like to see more about how he has chosen to organize his book. John also states his purpose very clearly at the end of the book. In John chapter 20, verse 30 and 31, it says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Another thing about the book of John, Jesus' identity is not kept secret. John makes it clear right from the start that Jesus is God and he is the Messiah. The very first chapter of John, verses 1 through 3, says, in the beginning was the Word, and he's using that as a name for Jesus. So when you hear Word, think Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. And this is a clear connection back to the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, and the first verses in the Bible. It starts, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So right here at the very beginning of the book of John, he's saying that Jesus is God, and he was with God since the very beginning. He was God all the way at the very beginning, at the very creation of the world, which is a huge claim. Another thing about the book of John is that Jesus makes several claims about himself, which Bible scholars call the 7 I am statements. And I have pictures for you here. So in the book of John, Jesus declares, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the gate for the sheep, I am the good shepherd, I am the resurrection and the life, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the true vine. John also records 7 miracles of Jesus, and remember that he stated that Jesus performed many others, but he only chose these 7 for a very specific purpose. And those miracles are changing the water to wine at the wedding, raising the sick boy who was dying, not raising him, healing the sick boy who was dying, healing the cripple, feeding 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and walking on water, and opening the eyes of the man born blind, and raising Lazarus from the dead. In this series, we're not going to be covering the whole book in this video series. We're going to cover the 7 I am statements, and we're going to do these in order that they appear in the book of John. And then we're also going to bring in the miracles kind of as they fit with the I am statements, so the miracles will not be in order. So for example, we'll be doing next week, Jesus says, I am the bread of life, and we'll talk about him feeding the 5,000 with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. So since we're not covering the whole book in the video series, I strongly recommend that you read the whole book. You don't have to study just the parts that we are looking at. It would be great for you to start just at the beginning of John and start reading. Like I said earlier, it's one of the more the easier to understand books of the Bible. And even if you don't understand everything, that's okay. Just read, and as you read, you can pray and ask the Holy Spirit to help you understand what you are reading and to speak into your life the things that you need to hear. Spending time alone with God and His Word regularly is far better than watching these videos that I'm making. So I really hope that this video series will get you excited about reading the book of John, and that you also won't feel lost. That maybe some of the things that we talk about will help you feel more confident in reading the book. A couple strategies that I like to use when I'm reading the Bible. For any book of the Bible, it is really cool to look at the names of God that are used in that book. So you can look at who is using what name for God and what is God saying about himself. What are the names that God gives himself? So in the Gospels, what names are people calling Jesus and what names is Jesus calling himself? And let's see. Another thing you could do with the book of John especially is to read through it and just kind of focus on one theme. John is very intentional about the use of themes in his book. He has one of the biggest themes is light versus darkness. It's very cool to read through and just kind of make note of anytime he mentions light or darkness or night or daytime. Or you could read through the book and just look at the times that John mentions water. There are many times that he mentions water or cleansing or washing, and those kind of all connect as they go through the book. It's very similar to like those movies that you watch and you see it one time and you think, oh, that's such a good movie, and then the next time you watch it you see all these different details that you didn't see the first time, and then you watch it a third time and you see even more details and make even more connections from something they showed you at the beginning of the movie to something at the end. The Gospel of John is very much like that, so it's very cool to read it several times, and even if you don't understand everything, just keep reading and then read it again and you'll understand more each time you get it. Really the whole Bible is like that. The different authors of the books of the Bible reference each other, and there are themes that carry throughout the Bible. It's just easier in the book of John because he's very intentional about it. And don't get me wrong, God has made the most important things clear. So, so you don't have to read the whole Bible many, many times to understand the most important things. For example, the most famous verse in the whole Bible, John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." So God has made the things that are most important to be saved. It is very clear, although the more you read the Bible and the more you study, the more you will learn, and you'll see more and more cool things and learn more about God. So I encourage you to get started reading the book of John. There's only 21 chapters, and this video series will be 8 weeks long. So you can read like 3 chapters a week and you'll get through the whole thing. And most of you could read 3 chapters in a day. So you could get through it multiple times. So the first time through, I would say focus on the names of Jesus, especially the I am statements that we will be looking at in this series. And then if you want to go through it a second time, focus on the theme of light versus darkness. And if you want to go through a third time, focus on the theme of water. And if you set aside just even 10 minutes to read every day, you'd be surprised how far you will get. So I hope that you will join me for the rest of the series. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them here. And thank you for coming, and I hope you have a great week.